Yesterday we discussed about one of the methods for estimation of nitrogen. Okay, and that's method's name is Dumas method. So the Dumas method uh, is a way to identify the amount of nitrogen present in the organic compound. So we add cuprous oxide and heat it with organic compound in excess carbon dioxide atmosphere. On doing that, we usually get N2 gas. Even if there are any other gases coming, we can all convert that to N2 gas using copper gauge. From there, we'll connect N2 gas in this instrument called the nitrometer. And once you get this nitrogen, we will estimate based upon its volume. So if its volume which is covered is V1 ml, using that we will convert that information into standard temperature and pressure. So now taking this V1 volume, converting into STP conditions, we were able to find out what is the volume, final volume. And from there, we were able to find out the amount of nitrogen present. Got that? So this is what we have done yesterday. Now, based on that, we have certain questions, right? Now, similar type of estimation for nitrogen using the other method called Geldahl's method. Let us see what does this method tell us. Now in Geldahl's method, what we take first, we would react organic compound with concentrated H2SO4. Got it. And we will let it stand for a while on heating. So slowly, as the concentrated H2SO4 reacts with organic compound, we would see the two parts of organic compounds, some carbon containing organic compound with some leftover H2SO4 with ammonium sulfate. So in case if there is nitrogen present in that organic compound, it will get converted into ammonium sulfate. Okay. Now on this solution, now this solution has some organic compound which is carbon, hydrogen maybe. Then there is some leftover H2SO4, then ammonium sulfate in the solution, to which we will add excess of NaOH. On adding excess of NaOH, this NaOH will react with the leftover H2SO4. So once that reacts, as soon as it reacts, it will get neutralized, and this ammonium sulfate will also get reacted with NaOH to form Na2SO4 and release ammonium gas. So we will start collecting the gas that is coming, which is ammonium, right? So let us say on this third chamber, I have collected ammonium gas. Again, I will react that with concentrated H2SO4. We can take both dilute or concentrated, it doesn't matter. Got it? So concentrated or dilute H2SO4. So what would happen? This entire, on the fourth step, which is ammonium sulfate formation is observed. Along with that, again some amount of H2SO4 will be left, and that H2SO4 is being titrated with NaOH. Okay, titrated means neutralized. We will add exact amount of NaOH required, not excess. So we will add exact amount of NaOH that is required to titrate H2SO4. Whatever the amount that is present, this is the left amount of H2SO4 which is been titrated with NaOH. So this is titration. So what has happened here now? Eventually we will get ammonium sulfate, got it? And from this ammonium sulfate, again, we can say that on heating, we will get ammonia, got it? So finally, that is how we will estimate how much amount of the amount of ammonia that has been released here, or we can release from here, that will be related with the amount of acid that was used. Suppose this is the ammonia that is coming from here, from the organic compound. Listen to me carefully, everyone. So this ammonia which has come from organic compound, is being reacted with this H2SO4, right? So the entire ammonia will get reacted with H2SO4. Which means ammonia is the limiting reagent. So this ammonia, number of equivalents of this ammonia will be equal to number of equivalents of this H2SO4 minus the leftover H2SO4, because there is some extra amount of H2SO4 that might be present as well, which was titrated with NaOH. Okay, let me show you equation basis how that might be. Suppose if I take the organic compound, okay, if I take this organic compound and I treat that with H2SO4, initially concentrated H2SO4, then I will get ammonium sulfate plus H2SO4 which was remaining. For this remaining amount, what we are doing, we are adding H2SO4, I mean this remaining amount plus ammonium sulfate has been treated with NaOH, got it? And this NaOH was added in excess, right? So on adding that excess, I will get ammonium get separated as a gas, Na2SO4 will settle down, H2O will be present. Now this ammonia was separated into a new chamber. There we have added H2SO4. Okay, this could be dilute or concentrated, doesn't matter. On doing that, we will get ammonium sulfate. Check this. So originally we took organic compound treated with concentrated H2SO4. We got ammonium sulfate and there is some H2SO4 remaining. To remove this H2SO4, I am adding some amount of excess of NaOH. At the same time, ammonium sulfate which was added will also react with NaOH and forms Na2SO4, and this will become ammonium, NH3. So this would come out as a gas because we are heating it here as well. Got it? So it will come out as a gas. So that gas is collected in a separate chamber. And that gas is now again treated with H2SO4, dilute or concentrated, so that we can get ammonium sulfate. But problem is the amount of H2SO4 you are taking may be excess also, which means more amount of volume might be used. Suppose the ammonia which has released, let's say if it has V1 volume, right, in ml, which means what I am doing, the ammonia which has come here, I am absorbing that in water. Got it? So whatever the ammonia which get absorbed in the water appear like liquid form. So it is NH3. You can write ammonia as NH3 aqueous, which is same as writing NH4OH aqueous. It doesn't matter. Both of them are the same base. So imagine this is that aqueous ammonia in which I am adding H2SO4. Suppose if this is V1 volume, if the volume of this ammonia is V1, right? And the volume of H2SO4 which you are adding is V1 plus V2, correct? If it is V1 plus V2, then we can guess that only V1 volume of H2SO4 would be utilized, considering they have same concentration. Okay, or whatever the leftover H2SO4 which is present, okay, whatever the leftover H2SO4 which is present, which is treated with NaOH, we can say that it will convert into Na2SO4 plus H2O. Got it? So if V2 volume is used here, which means V2 amount of NaOH will be utilized, considering it has same concentration. Okay. So if you take the same concentration of all of these three, ammonia, H2SO4 and NaOH, then V1 volume will be utilized. V1 volume of ammonia will be consumed by V1 volume of H2SO4. The leftover V2 volume of H2SO4 will be consumed by V2 volume of NaOH. Okay. So I hope all of you understood that. So quantitatively, we are finding out the amount of ammonia as, suppose if it has some equivalents, X equivalents of ammonia are there, X equivalents of ammonia. Here there are Y equivalents of H2SO4. So the amount of H2SO4 which is required for X equivalents will be X only. The amount which is Y minus X will be titrated with NaOH. I hope that is clear, everyone. Yeah. See how to put
Sir,
it
if
in a,
the organic amine does not contain nitrogen, sir?
what beta? Then why do we do this? We won't be doing this experiment now. If we know that there is a nitrogen amount, then only we will proceed to estimate nitrogen through this method. Okay.
Okay, sir.
Hmm.
Yes, sir.
The first step, what if we use dilute H2SO4, sir?
What if we use
Dilute
dilute
H2SO4.
H2SO4? Okay. Nitrogen does not. Actually, nitrogen is bonded with carbon, na beta. Got it? Concentrated H2SO4 helps it to break it down. Correct? Because concentrated H2SO4 will, it can oxidize that amount of carbon that is coming. So it will break that carbon nitrogen bond. Dilute nitrogen, not so much. Okay.
Okay, sir.
Now see the calculation part here. Let us assume the mass of organic compound. So the mass of organic compound is m grams, right? And the volume of 0.1 normal H2SO4 will be equal to V1 ml. Let us assume that the normality of H2SO4, I'm taking standard normality, is 0.1, and volume of 0.1 normal NaOH, okay, required to neutralize or titrate, that would be equal to let me take this as V2, correct? So V2 ml, correct? So the amount of H2SO4 consumed, right? So the amount of H2SO4 consumed by ammonia, let us say initially the H2SO4 normality is N1. Standardly we take it as 0.1 in most of the questions if it is not mentioned. Volume of NaOH 0.1 normal, right, which we take it as V2. Let me take this normality here, 0.1 normal. This is 0.1 normal NaOH. Let me take this as N2. So this N2 into V2 will be the equivalents of NaOH, which are utilized to neutralize H2SO4. So that if you subtract with the initial equivalents of H2SO4, those are the equivalents which are used for consuming ammonia, right? So that's how we will get to know the amount of H2SO4 consumed by ammonia. Okay. Now we know that one equivalent of NH3, right, will be similar in writing as 17 grams of NH3, which means it is equivalent to writing 14 grams of nitrogen as in N, which is present. So if I have N1 V1 minus N2 V2 equivalents, if these are the equivalents, then how much will be the nitrogen present? So how much that would be? It would be N1 V1 minus N2 V2 multiplied by 14, right? And all of this will come in milligrams if we take volume in ml. All of this we will get it in milligrams if we take volume in ml. So therefore, we got to know the weight of nitrogen or the mass of nitrogen present in the organic compound. So if I take percentage nitrogen present in organic compound, that would be equal to 14 times of N1 V1 minus N2 V2, right, divided by 1000 into molarity, 1000 into mass of this organic compound multiplied by 100. Got it? Which gives us 1.4 NV in general by M. This is like a formula. When in books you would see this as a formula, 1.4 times of NV by M. Okay, all of this is percentage nitrogen in organic compound. Got it? Why did I divide it by 1000? This was in milligrams. I'm converting that into grams. Got it? So now this has become grams. So the total weight of nitrogen in grams divided by total weight of organic compound multiplied by 100. That gives us percentage nitrogen organic compound. So if you divide this 100 here, we will get it as 1.4 into NV by M. NV are the equivalents of ammonia by M. This is a general formula. I'll leave it to you guys. Please try this question. I will write all the information. Mass of organic compound 2.362 grams. Okay. Then ammonia was evolved, and the N1V1, you can see that is been given here as N1 is 1 normal, V1 is 120 ml. Then the remaining acid was diluted with H2O and the volume was made to 500 ml, which means out of this 120 ml of 1 normal H2SO4, some amount was utilized, rest of the amount was diluted, and then that was titrated with NaOH. So which shows that N2 here is 42 ml and V2 here is, V2 is 42 ml and N2 here is 0.1 normal. Okay. So we got this. Have you guys got that?
Sir, 68.6%.
No, beta. Check again. Some mistake there. Okay. One mistake, which is slightly you got to be careful with. This volume of V2, right? It was diluted again. So just make sure while you are substituting the number of equivalents, you have to do it for 500 ml. Okay. Out of those 500, 30 ml was utilized. Got it? So here, first, if you check out the equivalents of NaOH, that will be equal to equivalents of H2SO4 during titration. That is during the last step, during titration. So from there, can I guess, check out carefully here. This is the 30 ml of H2SO4, which is treated with 42 ml of 0.1 normal NaOH. Using this information, N1V1 is equal to N2V2. I would be able to calculate, okay, the normality with which it was diluted, to which it was diluted. Correct. So that would be equal to, okay. So I'll write it as DIL, okay. This is diluted normality into V diluted is equal to N2V2. So that N diluted normality will be equal to N2V2, which is 42 into 0.1 divided by how much volume of that he has taken? He has taken 30 ml of it. So you can check out 30 ml of that. So based on that, right, I would be able to get normality. Okay, so this 30 ml, if I cancel it, I would get 0.14. So I'm getting it as 0.14 normal. Now this normality multiplied by this 500 will give me the remaining amount of H2SO4. Okay, so let me write down that that milli equivalents of H2SO4 which were left after absorption of ammonia will be this 500 multiplied by 0.14, this many milli equivalents. What was the mass of H2SO4, sorry, milli equivalents of H2SO4 which was originally taken? Milli equivalents of H2SO4 which was originally taken, correct, was this N1 and V1. Out of that, if you subtract this, we will get the milli equivalents used for ammonia, correct? So milli equivalents of H2SO4 used to absorb NH3 will be equal to 120 into 1 normal, check out this one, N1 V1 minus this 500 multiplied by 0.14 which was remaining H2SO4, and that was be equal to milli equivalents of NH3. I hope this point is clear to everyone. So from there we will get to know what is the weight of nitrogen in organic compound, which is 14 times of, how much is this one? This is 120 minus 70. That is coming out approximately 700 milligrams. I hope all of you are able to get that. So once you get that, now I'll know the percentage nitrogen, which will be 0.7 in grams divided by 2.362, which is the weight of organic compound. So I'm putting that multiplied by 100. Now we check out how much you are getting. 0.7. So approximately I think 29%. This is the actual amount, 29.63%. Everybody check the solution carefully and let me know if you have a doubt.
Sir, why have I considered N diluted, V diluted is equals to N to V2, sir?
Okay, check out. So what we have done, first after reaction with NH3, there was remaining amount of H2SO4. It was not directly titrated with NaOH. It was first diluted with water and it was made to 500 ml. Okay. But out of that 500 ml, I took a sample of 30 ml that was titrated with 42 ml of 0.1 normal. Are you getting it? So which means the normality after dilution will be different. No? Originally it was 1 normal, but once you do the dilution to 500 ml, normality will change. No? So to find that normality, we are using this N1 N dilute into V dilute is equal to N2 V2. Okay. So once I get that, I will know the number of equivalents which were left over, because normality multiplied by volume will give me the number of equivalents. If we take a case like nitro groups present in it. So for instance, if we have cases like benzene with NO2 or any alkyl CH3, CH2, NO2, any N double bond O, okay, they won't show this estimation. Problem is, when you treat this with H2SO4, this nitrogen is not going to get reduced into NH4 form. Okay, so H2SO4 cannot help this NO2 to convert into ammonium salt. So think this way, wherever nitrogen has a double bond, right? Whether it is with double bond N, double bond O or double bond C. Let me show you all of them. N, triple bond C, N, double bond C, N, double bond O, and double bond N. This is a hint. If you are not able to predict, just check out this as a hint. If you see any of this double bond, it becomes very difficult to break by concentrated H2SO4 and convert this nitrogen into ammonium form. So all of them will not give the right estimation with Jadal's method. I hope all of you clear with that. Yeah. So I'll put some examples now. Suppose all the cases which Geldahl's method cannot be used for estimation of nitrogen. Estimation of nitrogen. Nitro compounds are in RNO2. That could be with benzene, or that could be with simple alkyl group. Second, containing nitrogen as a part of ring. Nitrogen as a part of ring. Got it? Like pyridine, this one. This question has been very frequently asked in JEE mains and KVPY. Okay. Most of, I mean, in the last 4 or 5 years, this question has been very much repeated. So everybody should not make any mistake there. Okay. Wherever you see ring nitrogen, got it? It will definitely not give Geldahl's method. Okay. So this is pyridine form. This is called pyrrole form. Even pyrrole does not give that. So second one is ring forms. Any form of the ring where nitrogen has a double bond or it is a part of the ring, it does not usually give Geldahl's method. Okay. Next. Third, in case if you have compounds with diazo group. Diazo means N double bond N. Wherever you see N double bond N, that is called diazo. Okay. So which means if you have R N double bond N R, this is diazo group. Similarly, azo group. Okay, azo means R N triple bond N plus group. This one is azo group. Got it? This one, azo and diazo compounds, they do not give. Fourth, nitroso. Nitroso means R and double bond O. Here also, can you see that? Whether it is nitro or nitroso, both will not give that. Next type of group which does not give Geldahl's, right, is this one. Right, even in the organic form, even in the benzene form, if you see with N2, this is called benzene diazonium ion. Even benzene diazonium ion will not give, whether it is a double bond or a triple bond. Shortcut is all of this. Wherever you can see N, triple bond C, triple bond N, double bond N, double bond O, double bond C, all of them will not give any form of Geldahl's method. Sometimes you might be questioned like this, like, you know, if you have this way pyridine form and on the other end we have NH2. Now I can say this is a single nitrogen. This will definitely give ammonium test. I mean, this will definitely form ammonium and gives Geldahl's method. But the problem is with this nitrogen. No? So can we calculate the complete nitrogen as a right estimate? No. Although this may be formed, overall does not give right estimate. Does not give right estimate of nitrogen. So which means this is also we take it as a negative form for Geldahl's. Understood? So don't think that since there is one NH2, I should take this answer. No. All the nitrogens must have the form of this kind where everything converts into ammonium, or else they will not be giving Geldahl's method, because this is an estimation of nitrogen. Every nitrogen atom should be estimated. Now that's about Geldahl's method. So far in IIT JEE, in so many years of JEE mains or advanced, only Geldahl cell Dumas has been asked. All of these methods are rarely asked. Okay, whether it is Carius method of halogen, sulfur, phosphorus. So we'll touch them because they are in the syllabus, but they haven't been asked so far. Okay. Right. Let's see. Next one is a Carius method for halogens, sulfurs, and phosphorus. Next, let us see Carius method. In Carius method, what we are doing, we are taking an organic compound of, let's say, W grams. I'm taking W grams of organic compound. I treat that with concentrated H2SO4, concentrated HNO3. Remember that concentrated HNO3 and concentrated H2SO4 both will act like a oxidizing agents. So concentrated HNO3 will oxidize the carbon and hydrogen part of it in hydrocarbon present. Along with that, we will add some amount of AgNO3. Okay, AgNO3 aqueous. This solution also we will add to this, and we will let it stand for 6 hours. So over the time, what happens? Whatever the halogen form which is present in the compound, what are the halogens, beta? It could be fluorine, bromine, iodine. Okay. When it comes to fluorine, it does not give the right estimate. So fluorine is not used. So remember that. So the right estimate is for chlorine, bromine, and iodine. So for all of these halides, we will wait for 6 hours, and then we will see what is the precipitate that has settled down. So you will get a precipitate that will be settled down here in this solution. So that precipitate will be AgX, okay, silver salt. And the rest of the part will come out as gases like carbon dioxide, and on heating we will have water coming out of it, correct? So only precipitate that will be left out will be AgX. So we filter that completely, filter and dry that. Okay. Usually the process is filter followed by washing followed by drying. Okay, always in experiments. So first we will filter, remove out all the liquid part, then wash it. Wash it as in, again we'll add excess amount of water and wash away if there is any other salt, right? Then finally dry it. Okay. So after that, on drying, we will get a dry weight of that precipitate, and I'll call it as X grams. Okay. Now I have to relate this W with X grams. That's all I have to do. Suppose if it is a chlorine which is present in here, correct? Now tell me how much amount of number of moles of AgCl will be formed. If it is chlorine, you will have AgCl precipitate. So how much AgCl will be formed? This weight divided by the molar mass of AgCl, correct? So what is the weight of AgCl? AgCl will be X grams by 143.5. That is the weight of AgCl, correct? Because Ag, you know that atomic weight of Ag is 108, and this is 35.5. Chlorine is 35.5. So this is 143.5. So the atomic weight of chlorine, atomic weight of Ag, molar mass of AgCl is 143.5. So weight divided by molar mass will give us number of moles. Acha, now tell me about this. If you have AgX, how many moles of X will be there? For every 1 mole, I will have 1 mole of X. Correct? POAC. I'm using just POAC. Correct? So therefore, these many moles of chlorines will be there. Chlorine atoms will be there. That many chlorine atoms multiplied by 35.5 will give the weight of the chlorine. This weight divided by the original weight of the organic compound will give the fraction of chlorine, multiplied by 100 will give a percentage of chlorine. So percentage of chlorine present in that will be equal to this. I guess you understood, everyone. This you must have done this in stoichiometry, not with this entire setup, but you may have used only the data and calculated. Same thing, percentage of bromine. If you check out percentage of bromine, this will be X divided by molar mass is how much? For AgBr is 188. 108 plus 80. That multiplied by molar mass of bromine, atomic mass of bromine is 80. divided by W into 100. That is percentage of bromine. Similarly, percentage of iodine will be 127 x divided by molar mass is 234. 108 plus 127 multiplied by 127 will give the weight of iodine divided by W, which gives the fraction of iodine, multiplied by 100 percentage of iodine. Okay. So I hope all of you understood Carius method. So it's pretty simple. We do react with concentrated H2SO4, keep it for a long time, get a precipitate, dry that precipitate, get the information of precipitate, calculate the percentage of halogens. Okay. Now
Sir,
let us. What, beta?
What is the use of that concentrated HNO3, sir?
It is oxidizing any part of carbon into carbon dioxide. So let us see the same process for sulfur now. This time we are doing it for sulfur. So organic compound I have taken W grams. See how it is the same pattern. Okay. This time also I am using concentrated H2SO4, concentrated HNO3 and keeping it for 4 to 6 hours. Okay. Carbon dioxide and H2O can be removed out by heating. Okay. The leftover part will be only sulfate ions. This will be sulfate ions present. Okay. So, okay. And this sulfate ions can be precipitated using barium chloride. So after the experiment, after 4 to 6 hours has been done, then we'll add barium chloride to it. On adding barium chloride, whatever the sulfate present in the solution will get precipitated and it will become a white precipitate, barium sulfate. Barium sulfate is a white precipitate. And this, what I'll do, filter, then wash, then dry. After filter, washing and drying, we will get X grams of barium sulfate. This will be the X grams of barium sulfate precipitate. Dry barium sulfate we will get. Okay. Same
Sir,
apply. Beta.
Sir, that X grams will be theoretically measured, sir.
X grams can be theoretically measured also, experimentally you will measure as well, right? Theoretically we will use this formula. Okay. Once you get that, we'll get percentage of sulfur. Percentage of sulfur will be equal to 32 divided by molar mass. Okay, I'll write it in the same format so that you don't get confused. X divided by molar mass of barium sulfate, which is 233. Okay, multiplied by 32, which is the atomic mass of sulfur. So this gives the weight of the sulfur, divided by W, fraction of sulfur in organic compound, into 100 will give the percentage sulfur. Got that, everyone? Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now let us see the phosphorus part. See, once you understand one method, it is simple for all the rest of the cases. Okay. See, for phosphorus also, we'll do the same thing. Organic compound, W grams, taking that as W grams, reacting with concentrated HNO3. Got it? Keeping it for 2 hours minimum. Then this will convert into H3PO4 liquid. Got it? It will convert into H3PO4. Whatever carbon dioxide that comes, whatever the carbon which is there, it will come out as carbon dioxide. Okay. So H3PO4 which is forming, if you treat that with magnesium chloride in the presence of NH4Cl, correct? Magnesium chloride in the presence of NH4Cl, we will get a white precipitate again, which is magnesium. Let me take this little big. Yeah, which is magnesium ammonium phosphate. This is magnesium ammonium phosphate, which is a white PPT. This is also white PPT, but instead, it will have still water in it. So what I'll do, I will strongly heat that till it will become completely dry. When it becomes completely dry, I will get this as Mg2P4O7, and that ammonia gas will come out of it. Correct? So ammonia gas will completely come out of it, and water and ammonia both will come out of it, and on strongly heating we will get this as the final precipitate, completely dried precipitate. And let us say this is X grams. Okay. Now what we will do, using this information with respect to this W information, again we can get the same formula, that is percentage phosphorus in organic compound will be equal to X divided by molar mass of this is 222 multiplied by 62, which is the molar mass of 2 phosphorus, because it has 2 phosphorus. Check it out. Okay, applying POAC, 1 mole of this is equivalent to 2 phosphorus. Right? So 31 is the atomic mass of 1 phosphorus. So 62 is the molar mass of P2. So that divided by W into 100. So this will give a percentage phosphorus in organic compound. Is this clear, everyone? In case if you want to check out the complete reactions, it is actually going like this. So phosphorus present in organic compound when it gets treated with 5 moles of HNO3, H3PO4 plus 5 moles of NO2 plus H2O. This is what is formed, and this H3PO4, when you treat that with MgCl2 in the presence of NH4Cl, okay, NH4Cl always comes with NH4OH. Usually we'll always take this as a buffer solution. You know the buffer solution, right? So we take this as buffer solution and we'll get this as, yes, okay, Mg, NH4, NH4 and PO4. This is the precipitate which is formed, and 3 moles of ammonium chloride which is formed. All right. Usually we take 3 moles of this. Once you get this, we have 2 moles of Mg ammonium phosphate, magnesium ammonium phosphate, strongly heating will give us Mg2P2O7. This is called magnesium pyrophosphate plus 2 moles of NH3 plus H2O. This will escape as gases, okay, and this will get precipitated, and that's how we will get that percentage. This equations you will again be repeated in two chapters. One is group 15, the other one is salt analysis. Salt analysis, this is also the estimation for phosphate ion, PO4 3- ion. Okay. So that's why I gave you one so that you can start remembering from now. I hope you guys got this now, right? It is the estimation of phosphorus. Okay. Next, let us see estimation of oxygen. So for estimation of oxygen, we don't call it as Carrier's method. This is Alusius method. So here we take organic compound of W grams, okay, heating that in the presence of nitrogen atmosphere. So we obviously expect this organic compound to have some oxygen, or else we don't use this experiment only. Okay. So if there was an oxygen, on strongly heating in the atmosphere of nitrogen, we might get O2 gas plus other gases also, other gases as well, which includes nitrogen also, because that is the atmosphere in which you are maintaining. And once you have this, here we react these all gases with carbon around 1100 degrees centigrade. This carbon is in the form of coke. Okay, a powdered carbon, a black powdered carbon is called coke. We heat that coke, and we heat so strongly that it will become red hot coke. Usually in terminology it is referred as red hot coke. So once you react with that red hot coke, this carbon will get oxidized by reacting with oxygen, and it will become CO gas. Okay, In metallurgical industries, carbon monoxide is prepared in this way only. So once you get carbon monoxide with other gases also, still there are other gases left. The other gases include maybe some amount of H2 gas, maybe some amount of carbon dioxide, some amount of course, there is nitrogen which is carried so far. Got it? We don't know what are the other gases which are present. Got it? One thing is sure that in the presence of N2, we usually do not get carbon dioxide gas. Here, usually we do not get carbon dioxide. Okay, so remember that. So far, we got carbon monoxide gas here. That carbon monoxide gas, if you treat with I2O5, okay, I2O5 will get reduced to form I2. I2 will get precipitated, and carbon dioxide gas will come out of it, and that will be estimated as mass m1 grams. That carbon dioxide is collected to get that as m1 gas. Okay, everyone. So far what we have done, in the organic compound which contains oxygen, we treated in the presence of nitrogen atmosphere and heated. Then we are expecting that O2 gas will come out of it, and there might be some other gases also present, which includes nitrogen, which includes maybe some amount of H2 and so on. That on reaction with coke, red hot coke, it would get oxidized to form carbon monoxide. That carbon monoxide is treated with I2O5 to form I2. And when it is forming I2, this CO will get oxidized to form CO2. And that CO2 gas is collected. So overall, let me write as the reactions. We have organic compound in N2 and heat, it is giving O2 plus other gases, and this O2 plus 2 moles of coke around 1100 degrees centigrade is forming 2 moles of carbon monoxide gas. This 2 moles of carbon monoxide, when you treat with I2O5, is forming I2 plus 2 moles of carbon dioxide, right? So this gas will have m1 grams. The mass of that is being checked. So we will get m1 grams. So from this m1 grams, we will try to estimate how much amount of oxygen that is present. Because you can know that if it is m1 grams of this, from this, you know how much amount of oxygen will be present in it. So that weight you will calculate divided by W. So what would that be? So percentage amount of oxygen will be m1 divided by 44, right? That will be m1 divided by 44 multiplied by 32 divided by W into 100. I think you guys understood that. Why 32? Because every carbon dioxide will have 2 oxygens. So that's why you have to multiply that by 32. Whatever the amount of oxygen that has been collected from here, oh, right, sorry, my mistake. It has to be 16 here, correct. Thank you. Okay. So because this, out of these 2 carbon dioxides, one is coming from I2O5, the other one is coming from carbon monoxide. That's how we can estimate it. Okay. Now here there are 2 issues. Like one issue you just pointed out. The issue is that identifying the exact amount of oxygen. Second issue, I told you, like while you're heating, there is a chance that there is some amount of carbon dioxide also forming. Correct? So this estimate may not be right. So to confirm, right, to reconfirm and retest whether this estimation is correct or not, we use iodometric titration also. We do use iodometric titration as well. How we can see that? See this carefully now. When CO is forming, for every 5 moles, 1 mole of IO2 is used, which gives 1 mole of I2. No? So if I can relate I2 and CO, that will also give me the right estimation of oxygen. So what I will do, whatever the I2 that has been come, first I will add stars to that. Then what will it turn out to be? It will turn out to be blue color. That iodine which got precipitated, I will add stars to that. So it will become a blue color iodine solution, and that when you treat with hypo Na2S2O3, it will estimate the amount of iodine present, because it will become a colorless solution after this titration and forms Na2S4O6 sodium tetrathionate plus 2 NaI. I am sure you have done this in redox reactions. Okay. So from there you will find out number of equivalents of Na2S2O3 hypo, which will be same as the number of equivalents of iodine. Right. So this number of equivalents of iodine which we got, right? From there, first calculate the number of moles. Once you get the moles, then find the number of moles of carbon monoxide. You go back to this equation, calculate number of moles of carbon monoxide which has formed. Once you get the number of moles of carbon monoxide, you know the weight of oxygen present in it. Okay. So if you get, let's say, X moles here, see, I'm calling this as X moles. So if I get X moles, what will be the weight of oxygen in it? Weight of oxygen will be 16 times of X, because CO will have 1 mole of X moles, will have X moles of oxygen. So weight of oxygen will be 16X. So the percentage oxygen now will be 16X divided by, right, weight into 100. That will be the percentage oxygen. I hope all of you understood this. The other form by which you can estimate is the organic basis. Sometimes you would be given, this is slightly different than the other atoms. So far we are calculating about atoms. Now we'll calculate the estimation of organic basis. Got it? This is called as chloroplatinate salt method. You may have learned in physical chemistry. Check out. What is the principle here? Most of the organic bases such as amines as in we will have RNH2. These are amines. These amines react with chloroplatinic acid like an acid-base reaction. See, this is chloroplatinic acid. Chloroplatinic acid, when you treat with amines, it will form like an acid-base reaction. We will get a salt. And that salt on heating, we will get platinum back. From that platinum, we will make an estimation of the amount of organic base, that is amines, which were present. Okay. Let me show you by equation here. Suppose if this B represents the amine base, this is a base which I am taking. Okay. So think this way, if at all I take 2B plus N moles of H2PtCl6. Why I am taking 2 here? Because platinic acid has 2 protons, 2 H plus. Okay. So imagine if I take 2 moles of base, it should consume this 2 moles of H plus. Correct. Like that you take N moles of H2PtCx. Then the precipitate that it will be forming is B2 and H2PtCl6 N moles. This is the kind of a salt that is forming. Okay. So as an example, if at all I have to show it, check out, it has RNH2 plus H2PtCl6. Now this has one lone pair. So every lone pair will accept one proton. So there are 2 protons in there. So I'll take 2 of them. So what will be the salt that is formed? RNH3 plus twice and H2PtCl6, sorry, not H2, PtCl6 1, right? Because I will take only 1 mole of that. So this is the same representation here. Like that, if an organic compound has lot of NH2s, then I'll take N moles of that. I guess that is clear, right? So this way, if you get a salt, once this salt has been come, so I'll take B2 H2PtCl6, okay, N, and ignite it, basically heat it. On heating that, platinum will get precipitated. Got it? How many moles? N moles of platinum will get precipitated. Okay. And this is the estimate. Based upon the amount of platinum that has formed, we will try to estimate what is the mass of base which is present, or molar mass of the base which is there. In fact, the most of the questions here will be about identifying the molar mass of the base. Okay. Let me tell you how the questions would be. Suppose if we consider mass of the chloroplatinate, which I have initially taken, that is H2PtCl6, let me call it as M1 grams, and mass of platinum formed after ignition, this one, let me call this as M2 grams. Here this is M2 grams, here I have taken it as M1 grams, right? And the molar mass of base is M, and the molar mass of that base which we are taking is M. Then can I say that molar mass, that is molecular mass of salt, molecular mass of salt, B2H2PtCl6, n times of that will be equal to 2 times the molar mass of the base, 2 times the molar mass of the base, plus n times the molar mass of H2PtCl6. H2PtCl6, the molar mass comes out to be 410. Okay, so you can think this way: 2 into 1 is the hydrogen, plus atomic mass of platinum is 195. There are 6 chlorines into 35.5, so that total will come out around 410. So molar mass of salt, correct, the entire salt will be 2 times of molar mass of the base plus n times 410. So that will be the total molar mass of the base. If I take 1 mole, if I take 1 mole of B2H2PtCl6, right, this gives n moles of, right, n here, n moles of platinum, right? So when I'm taking 1 mole, it is giving n moles of platinum. Go up and see here. If I take this as 1 mole, I'm getting n moles of platinum. So if I take 1 mole of this salt, I'm getting n moles of platinum. Then if I take 195 into n grams of platinum, this much amount of platinum. Got it? Sorry, let me write one more statement so that will become easy. If you take M2 grams of platinum, okay, obtain, total mass that has been obtained is M2 grams, right, from M1 grams of salt, M1 grams of salt, because originally the salt which I have taken is M1 grams, correct? So this salt, oh, I kept it here. This is the salt which I have taken, yeah, here, this salt, which is M1 grams. So the salt mass is M1 grams, platinum which I got is M2 grams. So if I relate that, M2 grams of this platinum is coming from M1 grams of this salt, right? Which means 195 into n moles, which is the weight of platinum. This is in grams of platinum. This is in grams of platinum, right? This will give how much? How much this will give? It will give 195 into n into m1 by m2. This is the mass of salt that should be present. But we have just checked it out. To get this much mass of platinum, how much mass of salt is being used? This much mass, because this much mass is nothing but n moles of platinum, correct, which is coming from 1 mole of this one. So 1 mole will have how much weight? Molar mass. So that should be equal to 2 times of m plus 410 times of n. Okay. So from here I can calculate 2m is equal to 195n into m1 by m2 minus 410n and M is equal to 195 N into M1 by M2 minus 410 by N half. Right, so that will give us molar mass of the base.